Hey, everybody. Welcome to my masterclass that I'm doing today on achieving financial certainty using the 4 wealth commandments. So what we're going to talk about in this masterclass is the definition of financial certainty, what that means to me, what that means to the folks in the Whale Club, and as part of the certainty operating system. And I'm going to give you guys the 4 wealth commandments that we teach as part of the Whale Club and as part of the certainty operating system, which we learned from our mentor, Dan Nicholson. Dan has been absolutely fantastic to teaching us this stuff, learning these principles over the course of his career. Dan runs one of the top mid-sized accounting firms in the nation. He is an expert on both crypto and real estate, but this whole idea of financial certainty has been just so impactful for me and my life and those of us who have learned it as part of the Whale Club. So I'm going to share a little bit of that with you today. And first, I'm going to go to the whiteboard and we're going to talk about what is certainty. So we say financial certainty. What does that mean? And so to us, the way we define certainty, in this case, we're going to talk about financial certainty. Okay, there's a lot of ways to look at certainty. And if you've listened to any of our podcasts, you've heard us talk about the different currencies that we trade and all sorts of stuff, right? But what we're talking about here in this masterclass is financial certainty. So what is that? It means that we funded what we want on our timeline and playing our game. It means that we've got to first define what is it that we want. Financial certainty could be applied to your personal life. It could also be applied to your business. So what does the business want? What does the business need in order to have certainty? What do you need in order to have certainty? We got to define the timeline. So are we talking 2 months, 2 years, or 20 years? Right? How long do we actually have to get there? We've got to understand that so we can use it to make decisions that are appropriate based on our timeline. A lot of us, again, are in real estate for a reason. We're not interested in retiring at 65, but we need to define that playing field a little bit. Otherwise, we just end up chasing more and more and more. You'll likely hear me talk more about this concept of the solvable problem in another masterclass. We're gonna reference that term here. Essentially, a solvable problem is a way to take all this stuff, these goals, these timelines, the things that you want in life, and turn it into a math equation. If you're interested in that one, check out the masterclass that we've done on the solvable problem. And then lastly, we've got to do it playing our game. The whole idea of certainty is like, if you have to play someone else's game, what's the point? We want to align our strategies with our own unique disposition, our own preferences, so that we can achieve financial certainty, not on someone else's terms, but on our terms, playing our game. So this is how we define certainty. Okay. And we describe this tool, this system called the certainty operating system. Certainty operating system. Okay. So the operating system is exactly what it sounds. Think of it like hardware versus software. So, you've got a computer. That's the metal and the plastics and the wires and the tubes and all that stuff, circuits, right? That's the hardware. But it can't make decisions without a set of rules or requirements or algorithms. I mean, you can call it a lot of different things. And that's what we call the software. Just like our brains, and our biology, our physical bodies are the hardware, we need an operating system that we use to make good decisions consistently over time. Most people make decisions based on how their hardware feels, right? They're making decisions based off of emotions. They're making decisions based off of the phase of their life that they're in, without really any understanding of whether this gets us closer to the things that we want in life. So our software is so important. And if you don't have this operating system, this software that you're using to make decisions, oftentimes you can make decisions that get you further away from the things that you want in life. I've observed this in my own life. I was doing this before I learned the certainty operating system. That's what we want to share with you guys today. So what we also know, and this is a quote by William Edwards Deming, is that every system is perfectly designed to get the outcome it is currently generating. W. Edwards Deming. So what this says to me is that if you don't like the outcome, there's really only two things that you can do. Okay. A system is made up of three things. So you've got inputs, you got processes, and you have outputs. So if you don't like your output, because every system is perfectly designed to get the outcome it's currently getting. So if you don't like the output of your business, if you don't like the output of your investments, if you don't like what's happening in the relationships in your life, well, there's only, you need to go back and you need to look at the actual inputs, in your business. That's like the decisions that we make. We choose to do a certain marketing campaign. We choose to hire this employee. The processes are what manage that. I think we all understand what a process is. And though the combination of those two things produces the output. So again, if we don't like the output that we're currently getting, we need to analyze the inputs and the processes. So we're operating on, and this is all predicated on that fact there, that we actually have control of the system. We want to take control of the system by controlling the inputs and the processes. The outputs are a natural result of those two things. If you don't like that result, then we need to look back and change the inputs of the processes. Pretty simple. All right. So why don't we have I guess, why do we have anxiety? And I like this this equation here. Anxiety equals uncertainty times powerlessness. So anxiety in our business, anxiety with our investments, we don't know what to do. This is kind of the underpinnings of certainty. If we don't know what we want, we don't have clarity, first of all, oftentimes we get a lot of anxiety. That's a direct result of uncertainty. This was by a guy named Chip Conley. This equation here. So what we want to do is we want to drive in order to reduce our anxiety. And so, the distributive property says financial anxiety equals financial uncertainty times financial powerlessness, right? So you can insert personal anxiety equals certainty times personal powerlessness, or real estate anxiety, or crypto anxiety. You get it, right? In order to have less anxiety and more certainty, right? What we want is we want less anxiety and more certainty. So we want to drive certainty up, which basically means we know how to get where we're going efficiently. Powerlessness, to me, says we know the tools. So this is the how, and this is the tool. That's kind of how I think about it. There's probably other ways to think about it, but I think of it in terms of, if we want to reduce our anxiety, we have to recognize that, first of all, this is multiplicative. The more uncertainty you have and the more powerlessness you have, those multiply together to increase your anxiety. We've got to reduce that and drive certainty up. And so every system, every operating system needs a set of requirements. And that's what we're going to talk about today. When we talk about the wealth commandments, we're describing the first 4 requirements of our software, of our operating system. Okay. And so before I do jump into those 4, it's important to say that with certainty, how we approach the certainty operating system, we want to approach it with this orientation. We want to take the least amount of risk possible. It doesn't mean no risk. It means we want to try to reduce the amount of risk as much as possible. As we're getting towards financial certainty and we're making a strategy to execute on, we want to take the least amount of risk possible. We also want to design our system so we have the least amount of effort required, because we know that resources are scarce and we don't want to apply more effort than is needed to our financial certainty. And lastly, we want to have the most amount of options. Bring it back to the how and the tools, right? If we know how to get there, how we're going to get there, right? We can reduce risk and reduce effort. And powerlessness, and from my perspective, has a lot to do with the optionality here. The more options you have, the more power you inherently have. So as we approach financial certainty, we want to fund the things that we want on our timeline, playing our game. We want to approach it with this orientation. We want to take on the least amount of risk, least amount of effort, most amount of options. Doesn't mean no risk and no effort. It means we want to bias decisions that take on the least amount of risk, the least amount of effort, and give us the most amount of options. Okay? So that's our orientation. And again, every system requires a set of commandments or set of requirements. We call these the 4 wealth commandments. So let's just dive right in. First wealth commandment: closer versus more. Or you could say closer over more. And for those of us who've heard us talk about this on podcasts, and go listen to our masterclass on solvable problem. I'm not going to dive in too deep into it right here, but we want to use our businesses and our investments to help us get closer to the things that we want without chasing more and more and more. So have you ever found yourself, I certainly have, time and time again, with businesses and my investments? I could probably name about a dozen examples of me doing this in my life. That's why this operating system has been so powerful for me. You find yourself saying things like, well, I could make more money if I did this. Or you have a business that accepts revenue regardless of considering the trade-offs, which we're going to touch on as another principle here. All these principles sort of weave together like a lattice. I should say these commandments. And so I give the Google Maps example here all the time. So what is Google Maps? How does Google Maps work? And this is a evidence for the solvable problem, a case for the solvable problem. When you go on Google Maps and I live here in Denver, and let's say that I want to go somewhere, right? If I tell Google Maps, what does it ask you for? It says, well, where are you right now? And where are you going? If you tell us those two things, we'll work out the most efficient path for you to get there. And we'll tell you how long it's going to take to get there. So you don't have to run a bunch of stoplights and speed down the interstate at, 100 plus miles an hour, taking on a bunch of risks that you might go to jail. We're going to tell you how to get there safely in an appropriate timeline. That's what Google Maps does. Now, what would Google Maps say if I went on and I was like, hey, I'm in Denver and I want to go north as far as possible? Because that's what we say when we chase more. It's this arbitrary endpoint. There's not an endpoint. It's just like I'm just going to go as far as I can, recognizing that there's a lot of risk in that, right? We don't actually know what we want. We don't have any clarity on what we're trying to get to. Now, on the flip side, if I go and I say, well, I want to go to Minneapolis from Denver, right? Well, let me back up. So saying I want to go north could be like, I could go to Seattle, I could go to Chicago, I could go to Minneapolis, I could go to New York. Those are all north technically from Denver, right? One's this way, one's that way. So there's a ton of different directions you can go. And Google Maps will have absolutely no idea what to do with you if you say, I just want to go north from Denver. And so again, it's because Google Maps is a solvable problem. You've got to give it you got to make it a single variable equation so that we can get closer to that with the least amount of risk, least amount of effort, and most amount of options. So closer versus more starts with clarity around your solvable problem. Again, listen to that masterclass that we've got on solvable problem. It'll walk you through how we use different tools and techniques to come up with that number. Now, your solvable problem could be different for both your business and your personal solvable problem, right? But what we first want to do is create a mechanism that can help us get closer to the things that we want and not just chase more and more and more. So the perfect example of where you might be violating this, or where I might, not necessarily with me because I just got married and I don't have any kids yet, but I hear this all the time. Folks that say, well, what I really want is my business to be passive so I can spend more time with my wife and my kids. And what you end up finding is they haven't really defined how big their business needs to be, what type of cash flow that it needs to produce, and how much time they want to spend in it, all these different variables that need to be considered. So what happens is that business owner finds an opportunity and they're like, hey, we could expand into this other market. If I hired another 2 people, we could probably double our business. But they're not considering the trade-offs. What they're doing is they're actually incurring more work for themselves, more time in their business. It may also mean more money. Doesn't always equate. Higher revenue doesn't always equate to higher profitability. Most of us in business know that. But what you're actually doing is you're making decisions that get you further away from what you really say that you want, which is time with your wife and kids, or energy with them to spend with it. I highly suggest, if you haven't listened to it, go back and listen to the Certainty Talk podcast that Steve and I did on the currencies that we trade. We talk about a framework called Timer to understand what other currencies that exist in our life. When we make trades for money, we want to make more money. Inherently, there's always a trade-off there. We're trading other things for that. So without clarity and knowing what we actually want, what our business wants and needs, or let's talk about personal, for example. Let's say that you need, I'm just going to throw a random number out there. This happens to be my number, right? I want $10 million to fund my retirement, to fund the personal preference goals that I have, certain properties that I want, certain lifestyle that I want to live, certain, part of town that I want to live in. It doesn't matter. The point is, it's like, figure out that number, that solvable problem, so that now we have a mechanism for knowing whether we're getting closer or further away from that. So in the same way that Google Maps will tell you, hey, you made a wrong turn, you need to turn around. Or maybe you only have 2 hours to get to your destination, and Google Maps tells you it's going to take you 2 hours and 15 minutes to get there. Well, that's helpful because you may need to run a few lights. Like you may have to actually add risk. Or it may be a case where it's like you've got 2 hours to get to this event and you leave early enough so that you can get there in an hour and 45 with a 15-minute buffer. This is what the solvable problem helps you understand. Whether I'm getting closer to that and whether I need to slow down or speed up, right? We want to get a metric. Again, we show the folks in the Whale Club exactly how to do this, all the different tools and spreadsheets that we use to determine this, because if you don't have that number, you don't have that North Star, so to speak, if you don't know where you're going, how do you know when to take risk off the table or to add risk, right? Again, it's just because we end up chasing more and more and more, but I could make more money if I do this. I could go further north if I just did this. The point is like, yeah, but what happens when your car breaks down? What happens when what happens is you take on way more risks than is necessary to actually achieve your goals. So we want to use tools like the solvable problem so that we can get closer to the things that we want in business and in life without chasing more than we need, because we know that more is a recipe for disaster. And in fact, I'll add one more thing about this. We are hardwired as human beings towards more. Our biology dictates it. We're talking about the old brain here, the fight or flight response. We're talking about the woolly mammoth days for a second here, right? Like, let's rewind humanity back and let's observe why we have these fight or flight responses in our biology in the first place, because it served us significantly in the past. We didn't have it like we have it today. We didn't always know where our next meal was coming from. There were threats everywhere to our existence, to our life. If we took down a woolly mammoth, for example, we may not know when that next meal is coming. So we were hardwired, and we still are, to maximize, not to optimize for the most important thing. We are hardwired towards more. We are not wired to be satisfied. You ever caught yourself doing that? I got into business and it was like, well, I want to make $100,000 in passive income. That would be amazing. That'd be enough to just, do whatever I want to do. That goalpost has since moved, right? Like I got there, I'm moving the goalpost. That's the definition of chasing more and more. If you don't know what you need in order to be happy and have the things that you want in life, you're probably chasing more. If you don't have a solvable problem and you're not working towards it, you're probably chasing more. This is easy for those who are sitting in, I shouldn't say easy. It's a lot easier for those who are sitting in a W-2 job and who plan to retire at 65. They've already defined the endpoint. They might know exactly how much money they need in that retirement account, let's say at 65, to draw on it for the rest of their life, right? Of course, that's not always the case. Sometimes we live longer than we need to and we run out of that money. That's not a great scenario to be in. But the point is like we have to use certain mechanisms to create the same type of problem to solve. Okay, so I've hit that one pretty good. We're wired towards more. We want to use things like the solvable problem, like these different tools to help us get closer to the things that we want, both in business and in our personal life. Okay. So that was the first wealth commandment, closer over more. Number 2, preference versus binary. And we all know what preferences mean. It means there's not really a right or wrong. It's a choice. I like the color blue. That's a preference. A binary question. So like, what's your favorite color? That's a preference-based question. What color is the sky? That's a binary question. That means that there's a yes or a no. Binary is like zeros and ones. Yes, no, right, wrong. Should I do this or should I do that? Is that binary or is that preference? So here's the tool that I use to determine whether it's binary or preference? Can I Google the answer? If I can, it's probably binary. If I can get a yes or a no answer, it's probably binary. I would argue that most of the questions we ask are preference-based questions. Why is this relevant? Because what financial certainty means is that we funded what we want on our timeline, playing our game. The problem that we run into oftentimes is that we get caught seeking consensus. I'm going to make that note here. Oftentimes, we're asking someone to, what should I do? Should I buy this coin or should I buy that coin? Should I use this? Should I use direct mail or should I do SEO, pay-per-click? Should I expand into this market? These are preference-based questions. There may not be a right or wrong answer. The mistake that we make is asking preference-based questions as if they're binary, as if there's a right or wrong answer. And what becomes even more dangerous is we're asking people who don't have all the information. They don't know my unique disposition. They don't know my solvable problem. How are they qualified to give advice on what I should or shouldn't do in my business? So what happens is we end up abdicating responsibility for our decision-making to someone else. I mean, for a lot of reasons. Maybe because we just want someone to blame. Maybe because we don't want to take the time to collect the information, to analyze it, build a strategy, and then go execute on it. I'm referencing the case framework right there. Again, something we talk about extensively in the Whale Club, how to use these different tools off of this, right? So how can we get financial certainty if we're playing someone else's game? We have to recognize when we're asking preference-based questions as if they're binary, because asking someone, what should I do? What would you do? And then trying to apply that to your life and your business and your investments is a recipe to play somebody else's game. And you're getting confusing evidence. You're seeking consensus. What should I do? Now, it's okay. I'm not saying that you shouldn't ask for advice, right? From people who really understand your unique disposition, your tendencies, your proclivity towards risk, let's say. But what I am saying is that when you ask for this generalized, what should I do? Expect that the best you're going to get is generalized answers. That is dangerous for a lot of reasons. We can oftentimes make decisions that get us further away from the things that we want because we're not taking the time to really understand, does this help me get closer to my solvable problem or not? And what we do is we just ask, well, what would you do? What should I do? That's dangerous, right? So the second wealth commandment, preference versus binary, is a way for you to check yourself. Am I playing my game? Doesn't mean we can't necessarily seek advice. It just means we need to be careful who we seek advice from. Because oftentimes when we seek advice from people that don't really understand everything, that's all the cards and the inputs and the processes themselves. So we're asking them, well, what should I do to get this desired output? If they give you that answer, they're at best making a generalized guess. So keep that in mind as you move forward. That's the second wealth commandment. Number 3. So every decision has an infinite number of trade-offs. Another way we've said this in the past is that every decision is a financial decision. It means like anytime you do something, there's an infinite number of trade-offs for that. So I'm flying tomorrow to a mastermind in Tampa, Florida. I made that decision. Theoretically, there's an infinite number of places I could be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week. Theoretically, there's an infinite number of things I could be doing with my time, my energy, my money. I didn't have to buy that plane ticket and pay to be in this mastermind and pay for that hotel and the dinners that are going to come. I could use that for investments. I could use that for passive income. I could use that to take my wife out on a date, right? There's so many other things that you could be doing with that. And oftentimes we're not recognizing the trade-offs. So I'm just going to give this little acronym real quick. We talk about timer. So, can't quite see all that. Let's see. So timer is a way to consider the trades that we're making. So T stands for time. I is influence or impact. M, of course, is money. Now, there's plenty of other currencies. This is helpful for me because, it's just a framework to think through this, right? So every time we make a decision in our investments, let's talk about crypto for a second. One of the things that we talk about is a strategy to earn passive income, a strategy that aligns with this certainty operating system so that we can take the least amount of risk, least amount of effort, and have the most amount of options. And if you listened to the masterclass before this, you heard our strategy to start with stable coins, to collect coins over time and accumulate them for free. Now, what's the trade-off for buying coins and gambling on crypto? There's a lot of trade-offs. The first is we have to spend a lot of time watching charts because the whole strategy is to buy low and sell high. How are you going to sell high if you're not continuously staying up to date on where that price action is at? Your day trading takes a lot of time, right? This is why people like rentals in real estate, because it takes a significantly less amount of time. Passive, right? That's where that term comes from. It takes a lot less time and energy. So as I'm gambling on crypto, there's a lot of trade-offs there. One is it's going to take a lot of my time. It's going to take a lot of my energy. What's the impact to my family on that, right? The more time and energy I divert to other things like investing in my business is less time I have to make an impact on my family, to influence, maybe your son is in a baseball team, right? You don't have a chance to actually go influence him and his teammates because you can't be there because you're so busy with your investments or your business. We make these trade-offs, right? There's an impact to your relationships when you do that. Let's use a real estate example. Again, I feel like sometimes I'm saying things like, I don't want to give the wrong impression that scaling your business is necessarily a bad thing. You just need to recognize that every decision has an infinite number of trade-offs. When you choose to scale a business, let's say that's not reliable yet, there's a major impact to all of these different currencies that you'd have. So as we look at our investments, as we look at our businesses, how can we make decisions and also consider the trade-offs there? We have to also know that there's not always a right or wrong. There's just trade-offs, right? Yeah. So I'm trying to just review my notes real quick. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff I want to talk about here, but for the sake of that, what we're going to do, and just a reminder, guys, like we cover these 4 wealth commandments, and there's 12 other principles and tools that we use as part of the certainty operating system. And there's a bunch of things that come off of that. I don't have the time to necessarily talk about the Halloween candy principle, the Dunning-Kruger effect, you know, the different tests that we use to kind of evaluate the trade-offs, all that stuff. If you come and join our Discord and you listen to the podcast that Steve and I put out, you'll start to hear a lot of these different things. This is what we cover in the Whale Club. This is what the folks who have gone through our onboarding program, our 7 to 8 weeks at the beginning in the cohort, this is what they're learning. They're learning how to apply these because this is the foundation. If you don't have this foundation and you start taking off and investing in things and building businesses and stuff without having clarity, you're going to potentially be getting further away from the things that you want, chasing more and more and more. There's no end point, right? How do we know whether we're getting closer or not? You end up playing other people's game because you are making preference-based decisions as if they're binary. Should I do this? Should I not do this? Right? Again, we see this all the time in the crypto market. Just tell me what coin to buy. Just tell me what I should or shouldn't do or shouldn't buy. You're abdicating responsibility for your decisions, and that's extremely dangerous because you have no idea whether that's serving you, getting you closer to the things that you want. The third is that we've got to recognize there's an infinite number of trade-offs here. We don't have unlimited resources. If we make one decision, we are eliminating a theoretically infinite number of other options and other things that we could do with that time, money, energy, whatever the currency that we're trading for. So that's 1 through 3. Let's cover the last one, number 4. Number 4. I call this the barbell strategy. Another way of saying we want to only take asymmetric bets to the upside. We only want to take asymmetric bets to the upside. And what that means is that we want to take bets where the downside is very low risk, but the upside is high. How can we create scenarios in our business and our investments and our personal life where if we lose small. If we win big. And what we're doing as part of the Whale Club is trying to find and using our community to find ways to manufacture this upside. We don't want to gamble on anything in our investments and our businesses. That's the thing is most people get into business. It is a gamble. You are gambling. So what strategies can we do to build this barbell strategy out so that we've got asymmetry to the upside? And so I'll jump back to the whiteboard and I'll describe what I mean by barbell. Okay, so we've all seen a barbell. Probably. This is my sad attempt at a barbell. Okay. Do we load weights here? Do we load weights here? Do we load weights here? No, we don't. We load them here or we load them here. That's it. Now, this term, barbell, is what we call a bimodal strategy for risk mitigation. That sounds technical and then like a lot of words that are hard. Bimodal strategy for risk domestication or risk mitigation, right? It means what we're doing is we're using this strategy to take as much risk off the table as possible. Okay, So let's bring it back to the barbell. Got our barbell here. Oh, the marker's running out. Let me get a new marker. On this side of the barbell. Oh, this one's dead. Jeez, I need some new markers. So on this side of the barbell, we talk about reliable. On this side of the barbell, we talk about upside. So this side, when I say reliable, what I mean is this. Let's say your car was 90% reliable. Means that 9 times out of 10, you get in that car, you're going to get to where you're going. Going to get there safely. 1 time out of 10, your car is going to break down. Would you drive that car? Probably not. Means like literally almost once a week, your car is going to break down at 90% reliability. If that car was 95% reliable, it means 1 out of 20 it breaks down. You probably still wouldn't drive it. Once a month, it's going to break down. Probably not going to drive it. 99% reliable still means 1 time out of 100, it's going to break down, which means probably a couple times a year, your car is going to break down. We would never drive that car. What we look for in most of the systems and the things that we use in our life is reliability. We want things that reliably, we know that when we do something, we're going to get an expected output, right? Consistently over time. When I get in that car, I'm going to get where I'm going extremely reliably, right? So we understand that. And so when we think about our businesses and our investments, we want to stack as much reliability as we can. So if you heard our last masterclass, you heard me talk about BUSD, USDT, for example, stable coins. And they're reliably kicking off 4 to 12%. What we do is we don't take that and load it in the middle. We create upside with it and we shift that interest over here. So that's just one way of thinking about it. How about, because again, it's reliable. As you shift that yield over here, if we lose it, it doesn't affect our reliability. It's only additional upside. What we want to do is we want to manufacture this. So what's an example of loading something in the middle of the bar? I call this a job. And what I mean by that is, if you don't know how much time your business is going to take, if it's going to take you, some days you work 2 hours, some days it's 4 hours, some days it's 16 hours. That's not reliable. That's the definition of unreliable. I would rather work 8 hours and know that I've got to work 8 hours, because the rest of that I can allocate to upside. But when I don't know how much time it's going to take, you end up loading weight in the middle of the bar. So what we want to do is we want to say, well, how do I push my investments either to the reliable side or to the upside, nothing in the middle? Just like we don't load weights on a barbell in the middle of the bar, we don't want to load our businesses, our investments, anything like that in the middle. So think of it like, I use this example recently where let's take the person who's got a W-2 job, and they show up and they work 8 hours every day. They're going to get paid for that. Now, if you could argue that over a long enough time frame, that may not be that reliable, because they could fire you and you could lose it. You lose your job, right? And stop getting that income source. But it's the most reliable thing that you've got at the moment, right? So you might work 8 hours a day at your job, and you do a great job at your job because you want to maintain that reliability. You don't want to get fired. You don't want to show up and be working on your side hustle the entire time. But because we know we're going to spend 8 hours, that means we know we can get up from, 6 to 8 and work on our side hustle in the morning. We can get off work at 5, come home, work out, start working again, spend time with the family, and work from 7 to 9 on our side hustle. That is what we call upside. You have now manufactured a situation where you've got reliability, and anything over, we want to shift to the upside. We're not sitting around watching, Netflix and I don't know, doing whatever you do to waste time. We're allocating that to things that could produce massive upside for us. So, this was a concept written about by a Stoic philosopher named Seneca thousands of years ago. He referred to this bimodal strategy. We either want to be on one side of the bar or the other, nothing in the middle. Let me give you an example that might help drive this home. And we'll use, because this shows up in computer science. This shows up in the medical world. This shows up in health and fitness. So let me give you an example. Let's say, in order for me to maintain my current physical fitness level, right? Like I'm in decent shape, but nothing crazy, right? In order for me to maintain my physical shape, I guess, I might need to work out, let's say 30 minutes a day for 3 days a week, 90 minutes a week. So let's take carrot job, right? So 90 minutes a week. And I will maintain, that's another way of saying maintain. And let's say like meaningful change. Okay. So if I want to maintain my current physical fitness level, I need to work out 90 minutes a week. But if I want to put on 10 pounds of muscle and go from whatever body fat percentage I am, I have no idea, and reduce that by 20%. So I want to make a meaningful change to my body. I might need to work out an hour a day for 6 days a week. So how many minutes is that? 600. Let's just say it's, I don't know, 400 minutes. I'm just making it up. I can't do math right now. It's too hard for me. So in order to maintain my physical fitness level, I need to work out for 90 minutes. If I want to make this meaningful change, I got to work out for 400 minutes a week. So what happens if I work out for 200 minutes? It's more than I need to actually maintain, but it's less than what I need to make this meaningful change to my body. So I'm not doing enough to actually make the change, but I'm doing more than I need to maintain. We are wasting 110 minutes here. You either need to play on this side or this side. So this 110 minutes that you're spending over 90 could easily be allocated to something else. So it's like, if you're not going to do what needs to be done to make that meaningful change, you need to work out 400 minutes. If you're not going to be able to do that, anything less than that is wasted effort that should be applied somewhere else. Because like, what's the difference between doing 200 and 300? If by working 400, that's what you need to make that meaningful change, if that was the case and you worked out 300 minutes, you wouldn't make that meaningful change. It's all wasted effort that could be better applied to somewhere else. Again, this is all on the understanding that we do not have unlimited resources. So the barbell helps us look at our businesses, our investments, and saying like, well, do I have a reliable business here? Is my investment reliable? And what I mean by that is it predictable? Can I predict consistently what's going to happen? So if I work out 90 minutes, I'm going to stay exactly where I'm at, which is what I want personally. Anything more than that is just like mental health. I mean, it's not making any meaningful change to my body, and it's more than I need to maintain. So that energy would be better applied somewhere else. That's the concept of the barbell. So we look at our investments and we say, well, how do I create reliability? And then with everything that's an overage, we shift that to the upside play. Because on the upside play, you know, in crypto specifically, like we have a chance to make a 10x, 50x, 100x return. I've said it so many times. This has happened to me multiple times. I've seen it. I've seen it happen to tons of people. These are things that happen. If you're in crypto long enough, they will happen. You'll see this explosive growth. The question is, if I have to, you know, if I have to allocate resources away from reliability and I start shifting into the middle of the bar, I'm taking on more risk than I need and not enough to get the upside, you're wasting all those resources. So that's why we build our strategies in crypto that align with this certainty operating system. We want to build as much reliability as possible so that we can create excess that we then shift to the other side of the barbell. Once we create massive amount of upside, we shift it back to increase additional reliability. So that was a summary right there of the 4 wealth commandments. Let me just write them out one more time. The 4 wealth commandments. First is we want to get closer without chasing more. Really tough to do if you don't have a solvable problem. If you don't actually know what closer means, this requires massive amount of clarity in what you want in life. Got to know where you're going. If you don't know where you're going, how do you know where you're getting closer? How do you know when to take risk off the table? How do you know when you might need to catch up a little bit? Might be behind pace. It's very helpful. Number 2, we want to avoid playing someone else's game as we get closer to our financial certainty. We need to recognize the difference between preference-based questions and binary questions. Is this a right or wrong, or are you just asking a preference-based question as if it is binary to seek consensus and abdicate responsibility for your decision-making to someone else? Extremely dangerous for someone who's trying to get financial certainty to ask someone else what they should do when they don't have all the information. So be careful seeking consensus. The risk of this is that you start playing someone else's game, which could be getting you further away from the things that you actually want. Number 3, every decision has an infinite number of trade-offs. When we make one decision, we are eliminating a theoretically infinite number of possible things we could have been doing with our time, money, energy, whatever the currency is we're trading. And that has to be considered. Oftentimes we make decisions because we can make more money, we can get more this, more that. But you got to consider the other things that you're trading when you make that decision. Otherwise, you play someone else's game and you can get further away from the things that you want. And lastly, we want to take asymmetric bets to the upside. Asymmetric means it's higher on one side than it is on the other. Asymmetric to the upside means we want the upside to be really big, the downside to be really low. We use the barbell to do that. Reliability on one side and upside on the other. So we've either got reliability or we've got asymmetry to the upside. That's how you manufacture upside. That's it. We use the barbell strategy. This is a 2,000-year-old tool. So if you're wondering how robust this is, we've been using this for thousands of years. This was written about by Seneca, who lived in the BC times. So point is, as you're getting closer to financial certainty, these are the first 4 wealth commandments we want to consider. We've got 12 other tools, and we call them the decision algorithms, essentially. They're made up of the 4 frames, the 4 issue processors, and the 4 growth principles. And these are things that we talk about in this Excuse me. These are things that we talk about in the Certainty operating system as part of the Whale Club. You will be taught all of these things. So if you guys got a lot of value here, I'd appreciate you liking and subscribing to our channel. That's extremely helpful for us. We've got a link to join our Discord down below. So these 4 wealth commandments, we break these down even further. I sort of gave a high level overview of each of them. We've got individual tools that we use to help put these things into practice and actually make use of them in your life and in your investments. And if you want to hear about some of the other tools and algorithms and things that we talk about in the Certainty operating system, if this was helpful for you guys at all, do me a favor and join that Discord link. So you'll click on that link, probably have to download the app Discord if you're not already using it, and join that, because that's where we've got all these additional videos, all these how-tos. We're giving a ton of free information away, but we're not making this public. You got to join our Discord to get it. So we'd love to see you over there. Hopefully you guys got value from this masterclass. We're going to keep doing these because I think it's helpful for folks to understand conceptually how we approach investing. This has nothing to do with gambling. Everybody thinks crypto is gambling. Business is gambling, but we don't recognize it that way, right? Investing in general is risky. If you don't have a software, an operating system that you're using to make your decisions through, I mean, it's a recipe to chase more and more and more and more. I can tell you, I'm the perfect example. I was doing that for years before I learned this. So anyways, hopefully you guys got value from this. If you did, do me a favor and share it with somebody, like it, whatever you can do to help us out is much appreciated. So